Hello and welcome back to Chaos in the Paddock. I'm back as your host this week. It's me, Chiara. I'm not having fun in Nashville anymore, but I am dying of whatever sickness I got from partying for 3 to 4 days straight. So please bear with me this week. But joined with me today, I have Claire, who's finally back on the podcast again. Say hi, Claire.
Yeah, hello everyone. I'm back again.
And we have a new face today joining us for some chaos. I don't even know if you can call it chaos, but we have Tom. Tom, say hi and tell us what you do, your social accounts, favorite team. Just give us the whole shebang.
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having me. I feel like it's a long time coming. What the heck? I should have been on the first episode. I feel snubbed here. But my name is Tom. So I'm primarily on TikTok as Delta Tom FP1. I do have an Instagram that I usually just am on there to make comments and post stories, but definitely next year I want to do a little bit more with it. So TikTok is where you will see most of my stuff. I make F1 content, of course, as I'm pretty sure everyone that has been on this podcast does. I am an agent of chaos, of F1 chaos, so love that. Red Bull is my favorite team, has been since I started watching Formula One like 5 years ago. Max Verstappen, my favorite driver. However, my second favorite driver shall be, well, if we're going based off the rumors, will be a full-time driver next season in Liam Lawson. So yeah, big fan of Red Bull and Red Bull Racing and just Red Bull in general across motorsport. I guess you can call me like a Diedrich loyalist, if you will. So yeah, that's basically the way to summarize myself.
Oh my gosh. Well, I guess you started it already. Cat's out of the bag, or well, the cat is technically out of the bag. I don't really want to dance around the situation because I don't know where you guys watch your races, but after the Singapore Grand Prix, Sky Germany panned into like a little short commercial break, like documentary series about Daniel Ricciardo's career. And it sounded like a goodbye. And judging by how people were acting after that race, how news outlets were reacting, how the journalists on site were doing, and obviously there are pictures of the whole V-Carb team, standing guard outside, kind of welcoming him like a walk of honor. Could we say that this is Danny Rick's last race?
I think yes. I mean, as I said before, I think it's his last race. It, it's not a surprise, like we've seen that coming for the past few months. We had a lot of rumors, um, but he always managed to bounce back after the rumors, like after Miami and stuff. He had a good sprint race in Miami, and just 1 week before Miami, people were like, "Oh, he's going to be gone before Miami and stuff," and he proved them wrong. But I think this is the last one. Even like the way Max or the other drivers are talking about it, everyone seems aware. I think the new is like unofficial, and it's going to be official very soon. I wish they issued an official statement before everyone start talking, like the journalists, the press, and the other driver, even like Ricardo himself, because I think he deserves better just to have like a real farewell and be gone with like a big statement, because he did a lot for Red Bull. Um, he did a lot today, even for Red Bull. So he deserves a proper goodbye, and that's the only thing that like bother me a lot about this situation. But yeah, I think it's probably the last Daniel race in F1, at least.
What about you, Tom? What do you think? I mean, obviously your boy isn't contending for the seat.
Yeah, I think there's a couple ways to look at it. I'm with people that said they wish it would have been a little bit more of a former farewell, and I think the way to read into that is even just listening to Christian Horner's rhetoric this weekend, and even Peter Bayer. I mean, there's things that we expect them to say, right? Because they're not going to go into details about drivers' contracts. I mean, that's just information that the public's not privy to. However, I think when you take a look at it, especially what has happened this season, I think there is the possibility that Daniel Ricciardo does stay on beyond this race. because really the message from Christian Horner, at least this whole weekend, has been, you know, this meeting that's going to take place afterwards, after the Singapore Grand Prix, was already planned. Like they were going to do a meeting after the after Spa, and then they were going to do a meeting after Singapore to evaluate where they are. So I do think it is still possible that Ricciardo stays with the team beyond Singapore. I think that it's more likely Liam will be confirmed for 2025. And really, he should be, because if you listen to Daniel Ricciardo as well during his interviews, I mean, he said it himself, right? Like he doesn't want to just be on the grid to be racing and battling for P10. The whole point of taking this 1 year stint was to get back to Red Bull, and he wants to be back at Red Bull. And you know, I like Daniel Ricciardo for the personality that he is. However, if you're looking at it objectively, really, it comes down to, well, if he's not going to get the Red Bull seat, there's no reason for him to stay at the second team. And especially if it looks like the second team is now going to revert back to a junior team, yeah, like that's what it needs to be. I will always defend that because I am a Diedrich loyalist, as I said, and I specified that in my intro, so I could revert back to it. But you know, Christian Horner also talked about having Isaac Hadjar in the wings and Arvid Lindblad. Well, I mean, at the end of next season, Yuki Tsunoda surely is going to be out of his seat there. So you're going to have Liam Lawson, probably Isaac Hadjar, unless of course Arvid Lindblad goes out and wins the F2 title. So yeah, it makes no sense for Ricciardo to stay around there. And you know, when you look at the season overall, he just hasn't done a good enough job to secure himself that Red Bull seat. You know, it's been a combination of poor performances, poor strategy. The car has been an issue, sure, and Sergio Perez has certainly had an inconsistent season as well. But you know, I don't think that anyone can make the solid argument that Daniel has done enough this year to warrant a solid opportunity at Red Bull. And then when you look at the inconsistencies between Perez and Ricciardo, it's like, all right, well, outside of that, who does more for us from the commercial standpoint? Well, I mean, Daniel's very popular and he moves a lot of cans of Red Bull, but Sergio brings an entirely different market that Red Bull has never really seized. And with North America really growing in the sport, I think that's really enticing, and it that's really motivating for Red Bull to keep Sergio around. So that's my first TED talk of this podcast.
Oh my gosh. I think I'm gonna have like I'm gonna have to get you on here every single time something significant happens at Red Bull, because I'm just gonna read out, like I was writing an article before I came onto this podcast, and I'm just gonna read out what Daniel Ricciardo said when he was asked about being a reserve driver again. He said, "No, look, obviously last year it made a lot of sense to keep one foot in the door, and obviously the big picture was to try and get back at Red Bull. I'm also 35. Maybe that is a little bit of an age thing. I think it definitely came easier for me when I was 25 as opposed to 35." So even though, you know, Daniel could go back as a reserve driver if Liam Lawson does come on, you know, this season for Coda, I think that will be it. And we won't see him there in 2025. Because, I mean, not everyone is a Fernando Alonso who keeps coming back, and not everyone is a Lewis Hamilton who just happens to be there all the time. And I think, you know, with Daniel Ricciardo, I was talking to a lot of people when I was in Nashville about it. I think he just made the worst career decisions. He should have just stayed in Red Bull. He should have just stayed put. And I think if he didn't, you know, I think he left Red Bull because he wasn't the next big thing anymore, because obviously Max Verstappen came along, and there is always going to be this jealousy with younger drivers, you know, coming from academies, you know, winning Formula 2, Formula 3. And I think Daniel just got scared and didn't want to lose that momentum, but he ended up losing it because he left.
Yeah, I mean, just to interject there too, like Martin Brundle also clarified this weekend that the understanding he has, and again, this is all just speculation until it's actually confirmed, and we should probably expect that sometime next week. But Martin Brundle confirmed that, or clarified his understanding was that Daniel Ricciardo will not be in the car for Coda, but he will still be in the Red Bull pool, which, you know, can kind of be a little frustrating to the fans as well. And I think the way that I would interpret that is he's going to be an insurance policy in case one of two things happen. Either Sergio continues to regress and they need to make a change for 2025, or if Liam completely bombs. But even then, like I don't understand what the point would be then to replace Daniel at this point with Liam if they're going to consider him for 2025 at that second team. Like I think that just has to be off the table. And I think from Daniel's side, based on listening to what he said, it is off the table because he wants to get back to Red Bull. It doesn't make sense for him to stay as a reserve driver. He also commented that it is exhausting, it is emotionally and mentally taxing. So I think the idea of keeping him in the pool as a reserve driver for the remainder of this season is primarily to ensure that in case Sergio does really start to, be the Sergio of the European leg and just bin it into the wall every other race, then they can actually make that switch if they need to. But we'll see. It is confusing, and I can certainly understand people being frustrated that they didn't give any sort of formal announcement. But I expect we'll see something definitely like on Tuesday or whatever.
No, I just think like you say at the momentum that you maybe Daniel could still be there until the end of 2024 and be replaced in 2025 because we don't have like the Red Bull seat, the VCAP seat. We don't have the confirmation that it was Daniel or it was Liam or somebody else. It's one of the two seats that we don't have no one confirmed for 2025. I think they want to bring Liam into the VCAP 6 to train him for 6 more races. Like it could be accustomed to the current car because he drove the last one, but it was still AlphaTauri. It was AlphaTauri. Hi, with Toro also in AlphaTauri, I'm always lost. Yes, it was AlphaTauri. He drove the AlphaTauri car, but he didn't drive the VCAP. So maybe they need to train him a little bit on this type of car for next year. And it's 6 more races for him to be trained on the current car and to be a little bit maybe better next year with 6 more races in the bag. So I think that's why they want to bring him now and not wait the end of the season. And I can understand the fact that they want to keep Ricciardo in the driver pool, probably to put pressure on Checo Perez. Like if you do bad, you've got Danny Rick like just behind you that can like steal your seat and stuff. And he's marketable, he's lovable, people like him, he's funny, Max love him, and you need to be better. But I understand the fact that Danny Rick doesn't want to be just like a reserve driver, and I think he left Red Bull, as you say, Chiara. I think it was like a bad decision when you look back on it. But you have two different type of driver in Formula One. You have the number one driver, the one that want to win a championship. And you have the other one that want to win the championship but realize that they will never be able to, and they will rather be in Formula One and be like number two driver than be out of Formula One. I think that he didn't want to realize that he was probably a number two driver and not a number one driver when Max Verstappen stumbled into the Red Bull seat. And he wanted to prove to himself and to others that he could win a World Driver Championship outside of the Red Bull bubble and in another team, Renault, McLaren. He didn't manage it, and that's sad because he was really talented when he was at Red Bull. He had a couple of wins, good races, good season. He was the number 3 at some point. Don't remember which year, but he managed to be number 3 in the championship standings. Not everyone managed that. So he was a great driver. And I can understand why he decided to leave Red Bull at the moment that he decided to leave it. Now looking back at it, obviously it was not the good decision probably for himself. He could have won way more races if he stayed in the Red Bull seat. But I can understand the fact that he's tired and he probably rather be at home for the remaining of the 2024 season than stay to every single races until the end just as the reserve driver or something like this.
Yeah, Chiara, if I can just jump in just one last time here. Yeah, if you listen to Horner as well too, like that the interview that he had after qualifying, he also talked about and referenced the likes of Ollie Behrman and Franco Colapinto, and Kimi Antonelli, and alluded to what they've done this season in Formula One. There is a part of me that looks at the possibility that if they do replace Liam Lawson, it's going to be their version of getting a young driver in to see what he can do in that car, right? Now, I think we have seen what he can do, especially last year, Liam Lawson, that is. Um, there is also the part of me that wouldn't be that surprised if, regardless of what happens to Liam in the next 6 races, Christian Horner could just completely turn around and go like, yeah, you know what? It's not exactly what we're looking for. We're going to keep Daniel on for 2025, and Liam is free to go. I wouldn't be that surprised. Again, with Daniel Ricciardo and saying what he has said, that he wants to get back to Red Bull. In that case, I can sort of hold his words against him. But I think just we understand that Christian Horner pretty much has the final say, which does make me nervous. I think the second team should be a junior team. Um, and because, for Red Bull, that second team has facilitated the likes of Sebastian Vettel, Daniel Ricciardo, Max Verstappen. And I know people find it harsh in the way that they've gone about things, just chucking drivers into the deep end and seeing if they sink or swim. However, I think fans also have an understanding that, yeah, that's how Red Bull does it. And that's what sort of gives us the diamonds in the rough versus what's going on with right now, where it's just like, what exactly is the second team? And that's been my gripe, because it just feels like it's whatever Christian Horner needs it to be until he's exhausted the commercial, I guess, the commerciality of the likes of Sergio Perez and Daniel Ricciardo. And in that sense, he's like, all right, I got to find the next driver that's going to bring a lot of sponsorship dollars next to whoever is the main star at Red Bull. So it is frustrating to an extent. I'm hoping that Liam, at the very least, gets confirmed for 2025, because I think he deserves it. And as the president and founder of the Liam Lawson fan club, the head Lawsonite, if you will, I am very much looking forward to my boy. So a hearts up for that.
I'm gonna send this to his girlfriend. I'm just gonna put that there. I'll send this to Hannah and I'll be like, listen, I think you have competition. This man, Tom. But like, speaking of Christian Horner, well, how do I say this? I don't know if you guys read this, but Christian Horner did say he's interested in Russell. George Russell of Mercedes. Speaking of which, Mercedes this week, I actually thought they were gonna bin it like last year.
No, because Carlos Sainz wasn't in front. George Russell beat the car only when Carlos Sainz is winning. Carlos Sainz wasn't winning. George will stay in the car. This is not me. This is like the whole drama that happened in Singapore last year and in Australia this year. He binned it only when Carlos is winning. If Carlos isn't winning, George is fine.
I never noticed that actually, because I was very caught up in this situation 2 days ago when I saw the F1 article saying that, oh yeah, Christian Horner is interested in Russell for Red Bull eventually. And I'm like, Russell and a Red Bull. I don't know if I can see that. I think he's too British. I don't think he's going to leave Mercedes unless Kimi Antonelli does better than him. I don't know. It's a very iffy situation. But I think, okay, Russell was P4, which is a lot better than last year, and Hamilton was P6. I did not put Hamilton and Russell in my podium predictions at all. I think one of the people, like one of my Chaos girls, had Hamilton and George Russell as P1 and P2, but that seemed very unrealistic because I'm not really sure what happens with Mercedes. They're always a hit or miss. They haven't been very consistent. I mean, they're okay now. It's been worse since the beginning of the season. But I don't know, realistically, you guys, like, do you see Russell in that Red Bull?
No, I think it was probably, I think Owner had enough of Toto Wolff
Oh my God.
talking about Max Verstappen. So it was like, okay, you're talking about my child, I will talk about yours. So it was like, just you bothering me, I'm going to bother you. But if, and it's a big if, Max Verstappen goes to Mercedes or Aston Martin in 2026 or later on, and Red Bull doesn't have a young driver who is capable to win a World Driver Championship or something like that to lead the Red Bull team, maybe, and once again, this is a big maybe, they could look at other driver on the grid, and the first one that comes to mind is Oscar Piastri. The second one is Lando Norris. That comes to my mind, like looking at the current driver we have on the grid. I'm not looking at the F2 driver or F3 driver. The current we have on the grid, who could replace Max Verstappen if Max Verstappen decided to leave Red Bull, and if they don't stay at McLaren, will be the McLaren drivers. And after that, only after that, I can see George Russell in a Red Bull. Like, it's not impossible, but nothing is impossible. Like, if 2 years ago you would have told me, okay, Lewis Hamilton is going to Ferrari, I would have literally laughed in your face. So I'm like, never. But it happens. So I could see that happening, but there is a lot of and if before it happens. But it could happen. It could.
The joke is always on us recently. I don't know. I mean, like Newey going to Aston Martin, that was like the whole thing. Lewis Hamilton to Ferrari. What else happened? I mean, okay, Esteban Ocon to Haas was not very shocking to me so far. Like, not at all. Haas, like, and Ollie Berman, that was a given. Nico Hulkenberg to Sauber was like not shocking as well. But hey, Nico Hulkenberg was doing really good this week. Like, this is the first time, because I always steer clear of Haas most of the time, and I steer clear of Nico Hulkenberg because German Sky has a tendency to only focus on him. Like, every time I'm watching the race on Sky, in which I have to do sometimes because I get paid to do that, it's always, oh, look at Nico Hulkenberg. Oh, could he be on the podium? How's it looking for our favorite German driver? And I'm sick of it. I'm so sick of it. But I was okay this week because I was like, listen, now that I do this from a journalistic perspective, I can see why people respect him. I can see why people are like, okay, he deserves a better team because what he's doing with that Haas is actually very impressive. So, what do we
Yeah.
think about Haas? I mean, this is Magnussen's first race back, isn't it? Like, after his ban. Like, I mean, it was only a one race ban, and Ollie Berman did great in that Haas. Like, he was okay. But, like, how do we feel about that? I mean, he DNF'd.
I think Haas right now are in a situation that they really haven't been in for some time, right? They are a team that is probably towards like the back of the midfield, I guess. They're definitely a team that can qualify regularly enough within the top 10. That's largely to Nico Hulkenberg, and I certainly think that Haas wishes they probably could have hung on to him, and I think Nico may be right now looking at what's in store for him with that Sauber tractor next year. Might be like, it probably would have been better if I stayed on for another season. But I also think that Audi is going to be quite formidable. I don't think that they're going to be championship contenders right away. But I certainly think that once they get in 2026, they will be a lot better than I think what some media are expecting them to be, which is kind of just maybe a little bit better than Haas because of the current car. I think Sauber is pretty much doing the bare minimum when it comes to investing in that team right now. And once Audi take over, Audi don't enter motorsport unless they're there to win, so they're pretty serious. But yeah, Nico Hulkenberg has been the underrated driver this season, I think, for most of the season. I really think that if Red Bull wanted a legitimate number two driver, Nico would have been that. I do find it just to go back to the George Russell comment. I don't think it. I don't even think it was Christian Horner trying to poke at Toto. I just think it was his way of beautifully dancing around the questions, because it's like, don't try and say that. Don't try and put George Russell out there as a possibility when you could have gone out and had Carlos Sainz this year if you really wanted to, because as long as Max is there, they're not going to put George Russell in. That's ridiculous. So I think it was largely just that, just trying to dance around the questions, because he didn't really answer anything, quite frankly. But yeah, as so far as Haas goes, they have something really bright with Ollie Behrman, and they're in a position where they can go out and get a former race winner like Esteban Ocon. I, tying this back into Daniel Ricciardo, I think Daniel Ricciardo going to Haas is something that I would have liked to have seen, because I don't think he's bad enough to be off the F1 grid, but I don't think he's good enough to be at like a top four team, right? So I think a duo like Ollie Behrman and Daniel Ricciardo actually would have been like not problematic. And from a mentee standpoint, Ricardo and Behrman, I think, would have worked well compared to Esteban, who has a bad reputation when it comes to being
You see
problematic.
how I'm looking at you, Tom? Do you see how
Oh,
I'm looking at you?
I've been seeing. I was slowly backing up away.
No, you cannot say that. Like, just first of all, you are talking, Chiara, about the German bias, like, and we all know about like Sky Sports on British TV talking about Lando and Lewis and stuff. I have to put up with Canal Plus and the French bias, which mean they have like the podium number one, number two, number three, and then you've got Esteban Ocon and Pierre Gasly, and it's like P13 and P18, and I'm like, why are people putting this on TV? This is just a joke at this point. Alpine is a joke this year. And I am so happy about the fact that my favorite driver, Esteban Ocon, is getting out of here. Is free. You know the meme with like the guy with like the chain and it's like cutting the chain. And this is
Oh
Esteban
yeah.
Ocon getting free from Alpine in my head. And I cannot wait for the end of the season because my man will finally be free to ride a decent car if it's as good as the Haas this season. And I think they're gonna do like a really great partnership. So I don't permit you to go on there and say, "Oh, Danny Rick." That no, Esteban Ocon is and will be Ollie Behrman teammate, and it will be great. We are manifesting, okay? We are
You are
manifesting.
manifesting. I don't think I'm manifesting this. I'm manifesting Ollie Berman's safety for the sake of Fleur. I don't think Tom
And
is
my sake.
manifesting.
And what about my sake? I don't deserve happiness.
You deserve happiness with Lando winning the world championship.
I'm just thinking, like, given Esteban's track record, it's not one that is very complimentary towards his teammates, right? So, it's total. You're totally right. It is possible that they could get on well, and Esteban could, uh, turn a page in his career and realize, like, hey, I don't need to be battling my teammates all the time. So, it is possible. I think all the point that I'm making here is that like Haas is in a position where they can go out and they can attract a driver like that, right? I think going into this season, the expectation was Haas was going to be where Sauber is, and it would be tough for them to like attract a driver like that. They were going to get Ollie Behrman. Everyone predicted that. But they were going to have to settle with maybe keeping Kevin Magnussen, because what better options would be out there for them? And they went and got Esteban Ocon. So I think it is great for the team. I just hope it works out, because we know Esteban can be quite
Please,
feisty.
no. It's because like you're talking about past teammates. Look at the past teammates, okay? Fernando Alonso doesn't have a good track record with teammates either. Pierre Gasly was just chaos in the making because like you can put up nemesis in the same team and hope and pray that it's going to work. It's not going to work. Obviously, they don't like each other. And as soon as they could like ding their car into each other, they did it once and twice. So it's not going to work. And Checo Perez, like, I will give you Checo Perez, okay? Checo Perez seems very chill when with Max, but at the time when he was battling with Esteban was a young driver. Checo was a little bit more old than him in the F1 grid and stuff. And I think Esteban was kind of good, and Checo wanted to be the number one driver, but Esteban didn't want to be the number two driver because his place in the Formula One grid wasn't guaranteed with the way he is and like his family and stuff. So if I tooth and nails against Checo Perez, maybe a little bit too much, and I will give you only that. But Fernando Alonso track record with teammates, no, I'm sorry. Take that
Yeah,
back.
no, I totally get it. But hey, going into last season, Kevin Magnussen and Nico Hulkenberg had their iconic post race moment as well, right? So,
Oh, I
I
remember
think,
that.
yeah, I think you just take a look at that dynamic and go like, well, I mean, we were expecting fireworks over there, and then they've been professional. Yeah, sure, Esteban and Pierre don't like each other, but I think for the benefit of the team, you put that aside. Now, for me, from the spectator standpoint and also an agent of chaos, I like to see what has happened this year, French Civil War at Alpine. But from a team's perspective, it's like, hey, can you guys like let bygones be bygones and just be professional on the track? And like it just hasn't worked. So it's totally possible Esteban can turn a page and be a new driver, and it's a new chapter for him. And I hope that does work out because like has have good trajectory going forward, especially because they're using a lot of Ferrari parts,
Yeah.
and Ferrari has good trajectory going forward as well. So this is a team that I think next year, you can reasonably predict them to be battling for like P7 to P5 in the constructors, which 2 years in a row of that is great for them because let's be honest, they're never going to be championship contenders. That's not what
Oh
Gene
my
Haas has the
God.
team there for. Yeah, let's be honest, that's not a shot at them. But I think if they go into next season and into 2026 as a team that can be formidable enough to at least be battling for points, even if it's the back end of points every single weekend, that's good. I think they'll take that.
I was just trying to like see where Alpine even finished just to make sure that I wasn't,
P13 and P18, isn't it?
P13. No, wait, no, P13 for Ocon and P17 for Gasly because Ricardo is
It's
P18
P17. I'm so
and Magnussen DNF, but he was still in P19 and Albon obviously DNF'd as well. Okay. Well, very interesting. I mean, I haven't really been paying attention to Alpine that much unless a miracle happens because last year, if you think about it, both Esteban and Gasly did make it onto the podium. I mean, Esteban was in Monaco, like on the podium, which is already insane for an Alpine. And I think it was Sanford where Gasly was at the podium for the GP, but during Spa, he was there for the sprint.
I don't remember.
We
Maybe.
remember Gasly was on the sprint podium in Spa.
We used to be a proper nation. We used to be a proper nation. I don't know if you remember that, but Alpine used to be not so bad. And I just, as a French girl, no, this is so
You
painful to
weren't
watch.
bad when it was Racing Point or like Force. Sorry, not Racing, Force
Force
India.
India. Racing
There
Point
we
was
go. How did I end up with Racing
No, that was Aston Martin because Aston Martin was Force India
yeah,
Racing Point.
and Racing
Point?
Point.
And then exactly,
Renault.
there you
It was
go.
Renault.
And I have to say, like back in the day, Lance Stroll wasn't actually that bad of a driver either, and he finished P14. And Fernando Alonso managed to pull a miracle and finished P8 today. I mean, he even had a pretty good qualifying, Aston Martin. I don't know, like how are we thinking? Because like during the first parts of the season, like I wasn't paying attention to Aston Martin at all. I mean, okay, I was paying attention to Fernando Alonso, but I wasn't paying attention to like Lance Stroll. And I have a lot of friends who are Lance Stroll fans. I don't know why. Maybe because they're all Canadian and they like him as their Canadian. They're literally walking around with like Lance Stroll flags and everything. Okay, Tom, you're like waving and you're saying no. Like, give me a summary of what you think of Aston Martin after this race. Like, how do you think they did? Or by they, I mean, how do you think Fernando Alonso did?
Well, I went into it not expecting much from Aston Martin because they've had their issues, and Fernando Alonso hasn't been as good this year as he was last year. I think it shows just what ends up happening when you have a really good driver in a bad car, right? Like even Max, a couple of races this year has not been looking like the Max that broke a bunch of records last year. So for Aston Martin, I mean, they're exactly where I thought they would be this season. They're in the middle of nowhere. And we kind of saw it at the end of last year, outside of Brazil, which was probably like Alonso's last best performance of that season. When it comes to this year, yeah, I mean, really, like they're just at a crossroads. Like they've brought upgrades after upgrades, and they've just regressed. It's not good. They went out to get Adrian Newey, which I think is definitely something that will help them for sure. On top of that, they must be excited for the Honda partnership, and I think Adrian is excited for that as well because that's what he's been working with the last couple of seasons at Red Bull, right? So And I think both of those options are going to be intriguing for Max, especially if Red Bull does fall back next year. That's a conversation for another time, or maybe later in this episode. But yeah, like it is what it is. Like they're not close enough to the top four, but they are constantly they are ahead enough, I guess, of those behind them. And I think part of it too is Racing Bulls has been in the same situation. They brought upgrades, it hasn't worked, and for that's where like Racing Bulls has sort of fallen out of contention for P5 in the constructors. And I think for them right now, it's going to be hanging on to P6. But for Aston Martin, it's like, yeah, let's just sort of cruise control the rest of this season and go from there. And Lance Stroll is Lance Stroll. I could go on a tangent about my issues with Lance Stroll, which pains me in some ways because I'm Canadian and he's Canadian, and it's like this is what we have to offer.
I need to hear what you have to say about Lance Stroll because I don't know, like with the likes of Antonelli and Ollie Berman and even Colapinto now, like I'm watching the grid. I'm watching all of these races, all of these free practices. And obviously I do cover F2 and F3 and I'm like, talent is going to waste because of people like Lance Stroll.
And it's been going to waste for quite some time because if you look at the last F2 champion, Théo Pourchaire, I don't think Theo is going to have a seat in F1 ever. Like, I think his F1 story will never begin. Poor dude. And it's a talent that is wasted, in my opinion. Like, maybe he wouldn't have been a race winner and a championship leader, and I don't know. But we should have given him at least a chance to prove himself, and maybe it would have been great. And as you said, you have driver like Lance Stroll, who have a seat until he decides that F1 is not his passion anymore and he wants to, I don't know, do rally or maybe
Play
MotoGP.
tennis.
I don't know. Maybe we were like, Daddy, I want to do MotoGP. Buy me a team, put me in the moto, and we're going MotoGP like in next year. You never know with Lance Stroll. You never know. But yeah, this is sad to see so many talent going to waste. It always happens in motorsport in general and F1. You have at least one or two drivers each year that will never manage to be in like a top series such as IndyCar, Formula One, WEC, something like this, and their talent will go to waste. But I think it's happened more and more because drivers tend to stay way more in the Formula One grid than in the past. You have people like Fernando Alonso and Lewis Hamilton. They're fairly old for Formula One driver for the 2000 and stuff. When you look at the start of the 2000 year, but they're still pretty talented because even though Fernando Alonso is like the oldest on the grid, last year he was on the podium. This year he still managed to put the Aston Martin car in the points, even though the Aston Martin, as you said, is a top 5 team, but not even the top 5 team. I think, as Tom said, the Aston Martin is on a league of its own. Like, you have a top 4 team, you have a top 5 middle fit team, and you've got like Aston Martin in the middle battling against themselves, basically against their own car. But I think all drivers who still manage to race pretty well still have a place on the grid if they want it, such as obviously Fernando Alonso or even Lewis Hamilton, because they're quite close in age. But Lance Stroll is probably like keeping a new talent like to get the Aston Martin seat. The reserve driver of Aston Martin, I'll say. This poor dude, I'm just...
Drugovich?
Sorry for you. Yeah.
He's the like... most patient man in the whole entire world. That's the thing. Like, he's there,
he's never going to
doing
drive
his thing. I mean, Stoffel Van Dorn, who is a Formula E driver, is also there. But then again, Stoffel has a Formula E seat. He's not just sitting around doing nothing. And granted, Drugovich also races in WEC. That means he is busy sometimes. But I feel like at this point, while Lance Stroll is still there, and as long as Max Verstappen is free, I think his dad is just going to continue paying. And I mean, he didn't surprise me in Singapore at all. Last year, Lance Stroll hit the wall and wasn't able to, drive in the race at all because it just, the time wasn't there to fix the car the way it needed to be. And I thought that Lance Stroll would at least show us something this time. No, I feel like I don't want to say he's washed because I know that my Lance Stroll friends are like listening to this, but as a journalist, I do have to criticize him there, and I think his time is slowly also up unless he performs a miracle and like I don't know, somebody has to light a fire under this man's ass.
Yeah, I'll kind of go one step further there. I mean, there's lots of Lance Stroll fans that I've sort of interacted with, and they do talk about how like Lance Stroll has become the one driver that is like socially acceptable to hate on. And I know, it's not hate to provide constructive criticism. And I think they're not able. I think there's the inability sometimes to separate genuine hate and then also just speaking facts, right? So, my gripe with Lance Stroll is that this guy's been in the sport for like 8 years and his progress has really stagnated. This guy, oftentimes like Lance Stroll fans will praise what he's done in his early years of the sport, but that's it. Like he hasn't done much else. And it's interesting, like this year has been, I would say, better than last year, and the car is worse. He's kind of like Sergio Perez in that regard, like he does better in worse machinery. But at the same time, this is also a guy that for all of like the once in a blue moon brilliant moments he has, they constantly get overshadowed because he makes way too many mistakes that he shouldn't be doing. And what do you want to point to this year? You can point to the accident in Baku, and Lance Stroll fans will be like, "Oh, that's Yuki's fault." It's like, no, that move going into that turn was never on. Like he completely, basically, like dive bombed him. You go into China where he just slammed right into the back of Daniel Ricciardo and then didn't take ownership of it. It's something where it's just like, yeah, like he will be guarded because his dad owns the team. I think for him, it would probably benefit him if he got shuffled over to WEC, something completely new. But he's going to stay as long as he wants to and as long as his dad wants him to. He's not like the only driver though. Like I do think you can sort of look to some other drivers that it's like, well, maybe they've had their moment and they should be, I guess, politely moved aside to let the younger talent come in. Because you take a look at guys like Felipe Dragovic, who you've mentioned, Teo Porcher, Frederick Vesti, who I think is highly underrated, Robert Schwartzman, who I like a lot too. And these are all talented drivers that probably are never going to make the F1 grid ever, because of the fact that it's not just good enough to be fast. Like you have to have some sort of commercial and marketable asset to yourself. So I would put it in a way that paid drivers exist in a different definition now, in a more modern 2024 sense, where yeah, you're not paying to drive in Formula One like they used to, but you certainly make yourself a more viable option because of the sponsorship dollars you can bring in. Sergio Perez and Daniel Ricciardo are two prime examples of that, right? So Zhou Guanyu as well. I thought he was I thought he was good last year, and this year he went from being Zhou Guanyu to slow Guanyu. So yeah, not great.
I'm gonna have to create a post because of that statement right there. I mean, I love Joe. Joe is a very sweet person and he hasn't like done damage to the car the way Logan Sargent would have, which I respect very much because I feel like out of frustration, he could have been that car anytime. I don't think it's his fault because if Bottas is struggling and Joe is equally struggling, it's not their fault at all. But I do want to come in and say that Apex GP, I forgot we didn't mention them, but I don't know if you saw, but Sonny won like P3 and his teammate Joshua was in P5. And I just felt the need to put it out there. I love the Apex GP
I
admin.
don't like that at all. I don't like when they do that at all. That's just me. I think some people are okay with it. I'm not a fan of that.
I mean, this better be accurate for the movie. So
Oh, yeah. I didn't have, I was like, what are you talking about? I totally forgot about this thing. You know what? I forgot to tell you, they are filming a MotoGP movie. they are currently filming a MotoGP movie. So you know, like if you saw some clip of MotoGP, they have their name at their butt. So when they are in the bike, you have like the camera just like in the level of their butt, and you can see their name. And you can see the name. And one of them is called Jorge Martin, and his surname is Martinator. So up his butt, you have like Martinator. And for the past few days, you could see like the rocket, something like that, and people were like, "You not the rocket, you El Martinator. What happened?" And he said, "Oh, this is for a movie." And I was like, "Damn, they're filming a MotoGP movie, so we may have an Apex situation on her hands, and I don't like that. Just so you know, I don't like it. I have it in F1. I didn't need it in MotoGP."
I'm having fun taking the piss with this admin because I don't know if you guys ever read my comments on their posts, but I'm just like sarcastically agreeing to whatever they're saying or like, oh, what? I didn't know he got P3. I thought I saw someone else on there. But speaking of P3,
So bad.
it's time to talk about McLaren. Claire, I think I'm going to give this one to you. Why don't you summarize McLaren's performance for us, Lando and Oscar?
Today,
Yeah, the whole week. Let's like do the whole weekend.
fantastic, chef kiss. I love it. I want it. Give me 10 more. Like, I don't care. Was the race boring? Yeah, it was. I want boring. I want this kind of boring. I want all of you to be so bored you don't turn on the TV. I don't care if you don't watch. If McLaren is winning, that's fine for me. You don't want to attend GP because McLaren is winning, that's fine for me. Stop watching the sport. McLaren is winning the championship. Stop watching it. You don't need, we have a 2023 season on our end for next year. I hope so with McLaren. Because I really want those boys to win so much. All of the F1 world hate them. I want Oscar Piastri to win so much that he will become like the next villain in Formula One. This is what I want. I want Lando Norris to win so much that he is actually the next villain in Formula One. So check mark on this one. But yeah, I am happy. Like, was the race boring once again? A little bit, because he had like a 20-second lead, 20 plus second lead. So I was like, yeah, it was boring, but I wasn't bored. I was literally smiling. I wish I filmed myself. I was literally looking at the screen like that.
Even when Lando almost hit the wall twice? Did you see? Like, I had a heart attack.
Maybe I twitched a little. This is what happened. This is what happened when he hit the wall. Almost hit the wall. But I was like, it's fine. And people were like, Twitter and TikTok, everyone was complaining, and I was like, I'm just fine. You know, like the meme of somebody entering a party with fire everywhere, and the one is just entering with the pizza box. It was me. I was like, why is everyone like screaming and not happy? And I'm having fun. This is a nice weekend. This is a pole position converted into like the first lap lead, converted into a win. And Oscar was P3. I would have loved a McLaren 1-2, but Max Verstappen decided to be Max Verstappen. So obviously it was P2. Not cool, Max. Not cool. But still took the win, and still a McLaren podium. So I'm fine. I was happy. I will let you rant about the fact that McLaren is so good and the mini DRS wasn't the problem because they're still winning even without it.
Oh my gosh. I forgot about that for 1 second because like Lando won, but that was like a huge thing this weekend. Everyone was like, oh, the mini DRS, that's illegal, it's prohibited. And I'm like, well, they wouldn't have done it if it was like illegal. The FIA just decided to make it illegal,
yeah,
and made them change it like midway through. But like, I mean, I'm happy for McLaren. I'm always like up there when Lando was winning. I'm always, Lando's my boy, but Ferrari gave me the headache. I'm like, what the hell was that? Like, ever since the start of this week, I was like, this is either gonna go good for Ferrari or go really, really bad. Because I know that when McLaren has a good week, Ferrari will always have like a hit or miss.
If you look at the qualifying session and you compare the qualifying
That was
session
horrible
to the race, it's actually not a bad race for Ferrari because they were like P9 and P10, and they end up P5 and P6 or something like P5, P7. I don't remember, something like that.
Yeah, Leclerc was P5 and Sainz was P7, but still.
But when you look at the qualifying was bad, the race was great because this is what I see. They were P9 and P10, qualifying was bad. Okay,
I
but
want
they
my
still managed
husband on the
to do it.
podium again. Like if Lando's there, I need like a Carlando like podium
I'm
again.
so sorry. You wanted the podium. You could have
I want the podium for Carlos.
because we had it. Okay, you can yap about your teams and the way they are at the moment. I will let you yap about it.
I'm not even gonna do that. I'm just gonna be like, Ferrari, please do better. Like, I promise to wear red the next race I go to, which will be Mexico. So I better, like, gear up and stand there in the McLaren box wearing my Ferrari red. Like, I couldn't care less. I will be there and I will, like, I don't know, I will cheer for my team because I think it's about time that I finally get my Ferrari double podium. I think they can do it. I still need to enjoy Carlos's last moments as a Ferrari driver because I'm not sure. Like, I mean, I'm not ready for Lewis Hamilton to take over. I don't know. I don't know how he will look in that red. I don't know how he will be with the team. It's kind of scary. So we'll see. I mean, Carlos Sainz will look very good in the Williams suit. I mean, he will look good in anything. It's okay.
Well, I think
Tom, you're like not happy. No, you are happy.
no, I'm like I'm okay. I totally I like the shtick that Claire is keeping up with because right now was very much me last year, right? Like I enjoyed 2023. At the same time, I understand why people say that 2023 was boring, right? Because we've been given such a good season thus far in 2024, and then when you have races like Zandvoort and then today where Lando just takes a 20-second plus lead, it's just like yeah, it's not super thrilling unless of course you're a McLaren fan. But from genuine racing, it's like this kind of was annoying. I think you like every race review that I do, I give a team winner and a team loser. For me, the team loser was Ferrari because I think they qualified way out of position. Carlos crashing and then Charles lap getting deleted, right? Like they started P9 and 10. As Claire pointed out, they had a really good recovery, but they're going to be looking back at this and going like, this is a track that historically we do very well at, and qualifying really just ruined it for us because had they qualified properly, they probably should have been on the front two rows. They would have been battling for podiums. Max wouldn't have finished P2 today. Because I think pace wise, the Ferrari car was genuinely quicker than Max's car. I think Max just, he's Max. He does the best as he can, the best that he can given the car that he has. And I think we would have had a more competitive race if it was Ferrari versus McLaren. I still think McLaren would have won because Lando just drove exceptionally today. But I think it would have made them, it would have been a lot more uncomfortable for them because you would have had two Ferrari cars up there and Lando wouldn't have been able to, like take a pit stop and then come out right in front of both of them. Like their pace just would have been too good. So that's where it's like, what could have been if Ferrari started higher and weren't out of position. So, yeah, it sucks. I think they should be better in Coda because Coda is going to be bumpy. It looks like they have the straight line speed back because we saw that in Monza. I still think McLaren will be the team to beat in Coda as they will be pretty much from here on out.
Oh yeah.
But definitely, I think Ferrari should be better, and I think they will give McLaren a little bit more of a challenge. So, yeah, that'll be interesting to see.
Now I have a question for both of you, actually. I'm gonna put you on the spot here. I need both of you to describe the race in 3 words. Claire's probably gonna do this like really quickly.
I have forward, but
3. 3.
mm, McLaren world domination. You can have it your word.
That's good. I've never had someone do that before, so that's a really good one.
That is a good one. I think three separate words would be Disappointing, dominant, but emotional. Disappointing for the F1 fans, dominant for McLaren, and emotional for Daniel Ricciardo. I think those are three separate words that would be a good way to
And do
summarize it.
you both have a special mention for this weekend? Like besides, Max being on the podium, Perez finishing like in P10 and McLaren obviously, dominating whatever. Give me a special mention. What's something that surprised you today?
Colapinto start when he literally dive bombed into people. It was not really a dive bomb, but it was like a smart move, but a risky one. And it's not the kind of move you see rookie do. So I was quite impressed. I've been impressed with him for since like the first race he had in F1. He had a good race, and it was his first time like racing in F1 in Singapore, and we all know the Singapore track is very demanding on the race. He didn't manage to finish the race, and he was the only Williams on track, and he still managed to be quite high because that's still like a rookie. It's his third race, and the move at the start, that was like, damn, like give him a team. If we put one penny each F1 fan, I'm pretty sure we can buy an 11 team all together and give him like one of the seats, because I need this boy back on the F1 grid ASAP. Like I'm not kidding. He's really great. So Franco Colapinto was like my surprise, but he's been my great surprise for the past few races. So like that's not a surprise anymore, I guess. But yeah, Franco Colapinto starts. Checkers, loved it.
Yeah, I would echo that too. I mean, I think you can give a shout out to the underrated or under the radar job that Fernando Alonso did, and same thing with Nico Hulkenberg. But I'll echo what Claire said about Colapinto. I do find it interesting that we praise Colapinto doing a dive bomb, but then we would sort of give it to Max Verstappen if he did his famous dive bombing, right? Which I think honestly, whoever does it, I think is just a great racing move, quite frankly. And I think what Franco has shown is just like how much of a tough time Logan Sargent had at that team. Certainly Alex Albon looks a lot better beside Logan Sargent than he does Franco. I think what I was saying in our Discord chat was this is one of the reasons why I don't want to see Alex Albon go to a top team, because I think just like where he is right now with Williams works so well. And if you put him at a top team with any of the other like number one, or even for the most part, the number two drivers, I think he will. I don't want to say exposed because that's too harsh, but he has with Williams is wonderful. Like I think that just works. And I think for Franco Colapinto, he highlights that there is a bright future for F1 and the young talent. And the rumors of Williams trying to do whatever they could to get him that Sauber seat. I think I would have loved to have seen that. It sounds like Valtteri's probably going to stay on for one more year. But yeah, I think Franco has been fantastic since he's come in, and he's not that far from Alex. So I think that's great. I think Williams are like they have a good prospect on their hands, and we'll see what happens with him in the future.
I totally agree with you when it comes to Alex Albon. I mean, we've seen him at a top tier team in Red Bull, and he just didn't fare well. I mean, he was okay there, but I think Alex Albon is the type of driver that also needs to be nurtured. Like, he isn't the cutthroat person that, let's say, like the hot-headed person that Sainz, Alonso, or let's say Verstappen are. Like, he just doesn't do that. He's very nice. And like you said on the Discord, we all know what happens to the nice guys. So, I think Alex should stay where he is. I do want to know like how he
What happens to the nice guys is they drop down to P15 on the opening lap of the Singapore Grand Prix.
there we go. Drop down to the 15th like position and DNF because of like whatever the hell like technical issue. But I mean, yeah, it's gonna be interesting for Alex Albon. I'm very intrigued to see what he's gonna do with Carlos Sainz next season. Like that's something that is very interesting to me. I know like Carlos Sainz chose Williams for a reason. I think it was his only option, but I think Alpine also wanted him. I'm not really sure like what went down there, but yeah, I guess we're all just gonna be in it for a surprise. And we now have a 4 week break ahead of us, so I guess we're gonna use this to recharge and I don't know, fix our mental health.
I mean, I have a MotoGP race next weekend, so
Well, I'm not
I'm
off
not off
duty
duty
either.
yet.
I have DTM Red Bull Ring. So Tom's like literally like we should all go to the Red Bull Ring now. I feel like you should. I feel like that's your aim.
I
Like
wouldn't say
you
no
need
to
to go
that.
to the Austrian GP.
Well, I would love to. I am going to Japan next year, and that's going to be my first race. And I wanted to make a point of my first ever race to be somewhere that I truly like appreciate. And originally it was supposed to be South Africa because that was supposed to come back to the calendar, but then it didn't. So I will definitely take Suzuka because I think on the current calendar, Suzuka is my favorite track. So I will be there. But I think after that, I would like to at least go to one race every single season, and the Red Bull Ring is definitely up there. As far as the break goes, it's interesting because it's relaxing to the point where like I post every day, but when there isn't a race happening, I don't have to adhere to my original schedule because for race weeks I always have a plan to do like a set video for Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday basically, and then I have to do the qualifying review and the race review. During the break, I can be a little bit more creative with my content. So stuff ideas that I have in my back pocket that aren't very relevant to the race week, that's the time where I can actually like bring those videos out, because there isn't, I guess, like a narrative or a storyline. There isn't any relevance in Formula One right now other than like, oh, we're on a break. What do we do? So that I think that's the perfect time to be a little bit more creative with your content rather than just adhering to your schedule, I
I
guess.
have one question for you though. How long has your Liam Lawson draft been sitting in there?
You know what? I don't have a Liam Lawson draft right
Oh
now.
wow.
I've made No, I don't have one right now. I'm generally not one to do that stuff because, well, I think with Liam as well as I made the video this week, which is kind of like an announcement, but it was really tied towards the rumor when that started blowing up, right? So I already sort of put the seed out there for my viewers. So it sort of takes a little bit of the pressure off myself from having to do one right away. Because the tough part for me is like I wake up at like 6 a.m. during like a work week to get ready to go to work. And then I wake up and there's been a whole bunch of like news that drops because it's based in European time zone. But when I go to work, that's generally when, if there's like a driver announcement or something, that's when I'll make those videos. There's like a parts room upstairs that has good acoustics and faces like natural light. So whenever you see me without like a hat on and just like a black t-shirt, I'm filming that at work.
Oh my God.
So um, yeah, I sort of make it a little bit easier for myself. I'm working smarter, not harder, you know?
Meanwhile, Claire and I have no lives and can just film anytime. And I've been slacking on my TikTok, I know, but like with me, it's also because of actual work. I have to be careful with what I post because here's the thing, you guys. I found out that the FIA blocks you if they don't like what you're posting.
Yeah,
I
they
saw
do.
that.
At
And I
least on
mean, like,
Twitter,
what's
they do
been the
that.
big controversial thing that's been going on this weekend that made Max Verstappen such a big icon? They're not allowed to swear anymore. I have no words
That
for
is
it because
crazy.
the words I want to say will probably get me blocked and like get my accreditation revoked.
Babe, as I said, the FIA
They wouldn't
wouldn't
survive in
survive
DTM
one
either.
day in the MotoGP paddock. Jail for every single one of those riders. Like they swear in at least three language. And I'm just like, this is normal. This is in the heat of the moment, and they do that in press conference. They do that in cool down room. We don't have radio in MotoGP, so you cannot hear them in the radio. But they probably swear in the helmet. Today we have one of them who do like he gave the finger to another rider because he overtook him and like pushed him out of the track. So Jorge lost the win and ended up in P2. And so when he crossed the line, he gave the finger to like the winner, Enea Bastianini. And I was like, the FIA would have bowed, and the FIM didn't care. Like the FIM was like, That's a random Sunday in MotoGP. Like no one cared. This is grown-ass adults. They can swear. They don't like insulting each other. You know, this is in the heat of the moment. It's not like they go and insult each other. Like I understand why Max Verstappen was punished when he pushed Esteban, like because that was a physical like thing. But the fact that he just says like the F word, like for his car, it wasn't even against someone. It was about his car that is not working. So he has the right to be mad at it, I guess. And FIA just they grounded him. That is funny, not in a good way.
Like community, I don't even know what kind of community service like he would be doing. Like I'm not entirely sure what the logistics are in that sense. So I'm very intrigued. Maybe they'll make him do like some public appearances if that's what counts. But I think Max does that anyways. I don't know, it's quite ridiculous. But iconic move on him for like moving the press conference outside. Like he's like, let's take this outside in a nice and civil way. And I thought that was really, really fun. But yeah, I mean, my drivers get into fist fights all the time, so I would probably be sitting in jail with them.
I think it's completely ridiculous. I don't know what the point of it is. I mean, it's removing the emotion from the sport, quite frankly. And I mean, I think Max brought up a lot of good points. You know, he wasn't swearing at a driver or anything like that. It was about the car itself. So unless you're trying to protect the feelings of a car, I mean, good luck to you on that. It's yeah, it's a joke. I think Lewis put it perfectly too, right? You know, it is a joke. Hopefully, Max doesn't do it, um, like the community service. And yeah, it's absolutely ridiculous. And I think if you take a look at it, the FIA, what they're doing, and then Stefano Domenicali and what he's doing with Formula One as well, it's like what is your major malfunction, both of you? Like I don't know what exactly you guys are trying to do here. But yeah, it's unfortunate. It's like, man, this is what it is. This is natural, like human reaction. I don't know if it's the fact that like Stefano or Ben Salim has ever done anything competitive when it comes to sports before, but it's like, man, I've said a lot of like horrible things when I used to play hockey, and that wasn't even at a super high level. But what ends up happening like on the ice stays on the ice, and you know that's just what happens all the time. And even when I was competing in martial arts as well, you know, you're punching and kicking each other, but then afterwards, you know, like your friends, your colleagues, you go to the same martial arts school. So it's yeah, it's sports. I don't know, I don't really know what else to say. It's a joke. I would swear if I could, just to get community service, and maybe the FIA block me. That's what I want on my resume. I want the FIA to block me, and then hopefully in Suzuka I can actually see them and go like, and just like tell them like, yeah, you guys are a bunch of Looney Tunes.
I like how you're trying to keep it peachy because you guys know me, you guys know
I'm
how
trying
I
to think of the
speak.
children.
Like, there are
I'm
no
trying to think of the
children that
children. Yeah.
listen to this, and I can always up the rating. But yeah, I mean, it's been a very interesting weekend, and I'm kind of sad yet also happy that we now have the break. And sadly, this is all we do have time for today. And that was really, really fun having you both together. I think I chose a great pairing because we have the McLaren fan over here, the Red Bull fan over here. That's also, you know, a Liam Lawson, like the president of the Liam Lawson fan club. So I might have both of you back when news ever hits. Like that would be such an interesting thing.
Soon, I think so.
Yeah, I think it's great too because like Claire and I are like competing against each other, I suppose, like our favorite teams. But we also know that like it's all fun,
That's
and
fine.
Wait until I add the
we have
Ferrari fan onto here. Like, I mean, I am
I mean,
hosting, so I have to be careful. But let's put like someone like let's get a Ferrari fan on here as well. Let's see
you
all
can
of you
put Fleur,
battle.
like as we said, we know we're not rooting for the same team and the same driver, but at the end of the day, I'm not going to go to fight with people over like billionaire men that drive their car. And no, I'm not paid for this, so I'm not going to fight for Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri. And they fight their own fights. They don't need me anyway. So yeah, they won.
No, I like it too. I like it for Claire, where like everyone is complaining right now that McLaren's dominating, and she's the one like, oh, I'm on cloud nine, guys, because like I would be the exact same way. I would be throwing it in everyone's face, and she should. And you know what? At the end of the day, like it's all good fun too, right? So I think sometimes the fandom in F1 can be a little too serious, and it's like you really have no attachment personally or even financially to like the F1 drivers or the teams. We can all take a break, we can all breathe. Life is going to continue regardless of who wins and which team wins. We'll be all right.
And I hope we'll be all right for the next 4 weeks because that
Yeah.
was chaos in the paddock. Thank you so much, Claire and Tom, for being here today. And I look forward to having both of you in more future podcasts with us.